This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Welcome to Strangers No More, where all people are loved with the love of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. In the household of faith, there are to be no strangers, no foreigners, no rich and poor, no outside others. As fellow citizens with the saints, we are invited to change the world for the better from the inside out, one person, one family, one neighborhood at a time.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, I'm Maggie Slight, and we are Strangers No More. I want to apologize. We have been gone for several weeks. We took a little bit of a break while we took care of some matters of business and pleasure and church. Our friend Dennis is not joining us today. He actually went and surprised Al Caraway in the Sacred Grove yesterday. And I think he got so excited that he must have completely lost his voice, because he texted me today to let me know he had laryngitis.
Oh no.
And he has absolutely no voice. So we
should have got a picture of him and just put it up and just said, that's about as much as he could do anyway, so we could just put it up.
I just wanted to mention that we are members of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is a collective of independent, interesting podcasts who promote thoughtful, respectful, and engaging inquiry and discussion of all aspects of the Latter-day Saint tradition, thought, and arts and culture. And we invite you to check out the other podcasts within the Dialogue Podcast Network. I will give you a little bit of sneak peek to let you know that I was interviewed by Holy Human, which is another podcast on the same network, last week. And that interview, I will say that I need to work on my interviewee skills, because that interview went like 2.5 hours, and I apologize for the editing that they're going to have to do. But let's start off this podcast of ours with just a little bit of a around the table and say, what have we learned in these last couple of months? Bradley, you want to start us off?
Yeah. I have learned a lot of different things. I was able to attend the temple again for the first time since COVID, pretty much. So that was really exciting. Temples are finally opening up. I'm not able to go for another like 3 months because it's so busy here. Wow. Unless I can maybe try to find another temple to go to, but that was really nice.
I don't think they let you actually
go to different ones.
From what I understand, and I could be wrong, but I think you're only right now able to schedule time at your temple, at the temple.
So I don't know.
Because Christy and I went to Utah a few weeks ago, and we thought, well, maybe we could go. And when we started looking into it, we couldn't book a time if we wanted to, because so we have to go to the San Antonio temple because that's where we're tied. So, but I think it's just because there's so much. There's limited openings and so many people who want to go. So.
Well, that's wonderful that you got to return to the temple, Bradley. I am so excited.
Yeah, it was good.
Andrew, how about you?
I've relearned stuff that I already knew. How's that sound? So one of the things that I have always, is one of my mantras is service for others. And there's so much about what I try to do, but sometimes you forget just how meaningful service can be, and not just and this is where it's interesting, not just the anonymous or the service that we do, like helping people in our neighborhood or anything else, but how central it is to success. And for instance, I just recently changed jobs. I now work for Logitech, which I couldn't say last time we were talking because we were still, I think I was days away from and I couldn't tell my because my company I couldn't say out loud that I had accepted any position or anything. But I have accepted a new position at Logitech. And here's the one thing that is amazing is that it's service leads to success in life, in spiritual life, in professional life. If you think about yourself and only yourself, you're likely not to ever, even the most. Now, I know that there's exceptions to this, because there's a whole book called A Christmas Carol about someone who made a lot of money by being very miserly. So there is some of those, but if you want a well-rounded life and well-rounded success, service is the key, right? So.
No, absolutely. I agree 100%. Thank you. Thank you so much, Andrew. I wanted to share something that actually happened a couple of months ago, and I've started to go back to church here and there. My first time back at my ward was the beginning of April, but since the beginning of June, I've actually suffered with some really bad health issues that have caused me to be home pretty much the entire time since. But my last time at the church, it was significant to me, because in my head, in the head of a convert who I am, who tends to go against the grain, if you will. I mean, when I started to produce this show, Strangers No More, it really fit me. I thought, okay, this is me. I am, I don't fit in. Excuse me, I've got a lot of stuff coming through my lungs. But I always felt like I didn't fit in. And I always felt like there was this group of members that I didn't fit into. But I could tell you exactly who that group of members were in each ward or branch that I belonged to. And I could tell you which were the in clique or whatever. Well, up until 2 months ago, I thought I could tell you that, because my perceptions were completely rocked when a man who I know to have held callings within the bishopric, the people that know everything that's going on about, the war, or at least, in my head. And so he was in my head, definitely within that clique. And yet that person came up to me and said that he really liked our podcast because he didn't feel like he fit in. And that rocked my perception. It completely rocked my perception. Because if he didn't feel like he fit in, or if he's gone through times where he didn't feel like he fit in, and to me, he was the nth degree of the clique that I didn't fit into, does that mean that nobody feels like they fit in?
I think there's a lot of people who don't. I remember at one of my reunions, I sat and had a conversation with one of the girls that like, she was in like presidencies, like class presidencies. She was always in this organization committee or that organization committee. I think she was a cheerleader. I could be wrong on that one. I mean, she was in thing after thing after thing. And from my perception, I thought, okay, she is just in that crowd, and she had friends and everything else. And when we were talking, she says, and I didn't bring that up to her, but we were having this conversation. We were talking about high school, and I was just talking about, there are aspects, there's always aspects you love and hate, but I really enjoyed high school. Now, I rarely went to class, so I really enjoyed high school, but but she said was she's so glad she doesn't have to always worry about fitting in anymore, because now she has her own family and everything else. And then I said, but wait, you were in this and this and this. She said, yeah, I was doing all those things so I could feel like I was fitting in. And I'm like, really? I wonder how many people don't feel completely like they're fitting in, and those who do may just be so few that we just, we truly don't know. But anyway, no idea.
Yeah, my perceptions were completely rocked. They were completely rocked, and it is, I've had some really major health challenges this last 2 months, because I've had some lung issues that weren't diagnosed, and people thought it, for a minute there thought it was my heart, and a minute there it thought it was other things. It went back and forth for the last 7 weeks. So I'm actually glad that we're only recording now, that we've figured out what it is. Because it could have been something so much worse. But during the same time that those perceptions were rocked, I was going through this mortality thing. So I've just been going through. And then, as a prequel to our lesson that I'm just going to have you introduce in just a second here, Andrew, then I started studying with Dennis, section 76, about where we go when we die. So with that, Andrew, why don't you take away the introduction?
So section 76, it's funny because we often refer to the first vision, but this section is referred to as the vision, which it says it kind of holds a lot of weight if you think about it. When the first vision is when Jesus Christ and God visited Joseph Smith, sparking all this the restoration, right? One of the culminating events of doctrine, or at least in Joseph Smith's day, was this revelation. Prior to that, the understanding of what happens after this life was very, very, very different. And so, this I had just a sec. I had some. I think I must have closed my my windows here. I had some things pulled up. Oh, here we go. No, I have them. Good. This vision took place at not at the it was at just someone's home. So the main recording of it, beyond what we see here, the main recording of what was going on is taken from the journal of a guy named Philo Dibble, who talked a lot about what was going on that was not the actual vision, like how did it lead up to it and everything else. You can read that in the Revelations in context. But this actually took place in the Joel Johnson home. So there's some interesting things, and this is not even in the Revelations of context. I was talking to a friend of mine from at the church. The vision actually, we imagine the vision unfolds the way and speed that we read it, right? But this vision actually unfolded to a degree that they had people writing it down as it happened, which means they couldn't just like Joseph Smith had to carefully say the words slowly, and Sidney Rigdon would say what he saw, Joseph Smith would say what he saw, and then they would. So it was a long process to actually, and they stayed in this. This is the vision that there's an interesting story that I've heard all my life about receiving revelation, receiving, being in the state of having a vision and everything else, and how taxing it can be physically on you. At the end of this vision, I guess Sidney Rigdon just fell down like a limp noodle or whatever. And Joseph Smith seemed fine, and people asked him about it, and he said, well, he's just not as used to it as I am, because it takes so much. But if you recall, in the first vision, just after that, in some of the descriptions of Joseph Smith, he talked about his great fatigue and everything.
Yeah, exhausted
afterwards as well. So, and before I get in, but the other key piece that I wanted to bring up before we get into the actual vision itself, and actually what we learned from the vision, is that the fundamental change in how we understand in the Christian world, and especially in the LDS church, what happens after this life. Prior to this, there were, especially in his day and in his area, there were two main thoughts. The one thought was the classic thought, everything's heaven or hell. You're going to go to heaven or hell. God's going to pick the good people. Most everyone else is going to be the bad people. And literally, that was the idea, that very, very few people would ever make it into heaven. Everyone else would be going to hell, which meant just thousands of God's children would not even have the opportunity to be saved, let alone be there. Then the other option was kind of a reverse of that, was, hey, everyone will be saved. God has chosen, there are some of those people who choose to do terrible, but the majority of people in this world, and that was called universalism, right? Universalism was this idea that all would be saved. And so what we find out is that it's actually kind of both. And anyway, so that's my setup for today.
Thank you, Andrew. I still don't. My voice is still.
You've been talking to Dennis too much.
That's what I was going to say. I swear I have not been talking to Dennis that much. Excuse me. No, it's just been getting rid of all of that stuff out of my lungs. I actually was in the ER a couple of days ago, and I spent a considerable amount of time in the ER. And I have what's called pneumonitis. I have an inflammation in my lungs. So please excuse my coughing. I will try to make it through.
That makes me think of Seinfeld. Pneumonitis. Sorry.
Pneumonitis. Okay. Bradley, I'm going to call on you, because I was when I was listening to the Come Follow Me about this. This is one of my absolute favorite sections in the Doctrine and Covenants. And when I first studied it, I was completely taken away as a convert. But today, as I was going over some of our Come Follow Me materials, one of the things that I was really struck by was some of the comparisons to this section and the principles in the songs, I Am a Child of God. Bradley, can you expand upon that a bit with the 7624?
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about this before.
Yeah, we did.
Just this idea that understanding that we are all children of God is not an easy thing to comprehend, I don't think, because it can really change our perspectives on like how we view one another. And I think like we can know and believe that we're children of God, but actually like internalizing that and remembering that is really hard to do. And I don't know, the conversation we were having earlier about how like we feel like people would really have different experiences with people if they understood that they were children of God. If it was easy to understand that concept, that issue wouldn't be prevalent in the church, and I feel like it still kind of is. So I think it's something that we're trying to like work on.
Well, how does this truth affect the way we treat one another?
I feel like it just helps us to see that we're all equals and we're all just doing our best. We have a divine potential, and we deserve to be treated in a way that we would want to be treated ourselves. Yeah, that's what I would think.
Elder Bednar talked about knowledge and understanding one time. I think he was quoting Elder Packer, actually, who probably was quoting someone else, who probably was quoting someone else. I don't know. But the idea that he talked about the idea that it's one thing to have knowledge of, and then it's different to actually truly understand. And he said, if you truly understood doctrine and if you truly understood it, you wouldn't stray from it. Or very few people would. There's some people who would. They're called the sons of perdition. We can talk about them later. But most people, if they truly understood, not just knew, it's one thing to be told you that this is the C chord, and it can make up a lot of different things, and just tell you that that's what it does. It's another thing to actually play. And I think a better analogy would be, it's one thing to learn about swimming. There, in one of my favorite shows, Big Bang Theory, Sheldon had never gone swimming, but he claimed he knew how to swim because he'd read everything there is that about swimming. And so the difference is understanding and knowing. And if we truly knew and understood that we were all children of God, we would look at people differently.
I can honestly say that riding a Harley is very much like that. You can read everything about it, but until you put that bike into gear and get that clunk under you, you know you don't understand. You just don't understand.
Which is the point of coming here, right? In the pre-existence, we were taught how to, we read how to swim. Essentially, we read how to live. We were taught about living our life. We were taught about coming down here, but it really takes coming down here, getting a body to have the experience, because it's all experiential, right?
And we can take that much further and say we're being taught right now about the 3 degrees of glory in this section, but we really won't truly understand until we're there.
If you really think about this section, though, how cool it is. We went from here, let me share my screen real quick. We went from a feeling of we're either here on this earth and we're either going to go up here or down here, and it all depends on everything we do. We don't really, I mean, if we screw up, we can repent, but we're pretty much going to be judged, and everything's, I mean, few people are going to make it up here. That's what people perceived in many cases. But if you look at it, sorry, I'm trying to get forward. Go forward. Okay, now I got to stop sharing and I guess go forward that way. And then if you look at it the way it described in there, sorry, I had to stop and start. We actually, every single person is saved, other than those who basically can look God in the face, know everything about him, and then choose to turn. Those are called sons of perdition. Very few people fall into that category. Very, very few. Everyone else is saved. That is just straight up. We are all saved. We all fall into a degree of glory.
And
where do we fit?
I will mention the same thing that I was joking with you guys about as I came out of the ER. I only see sons of perdition. I don't see any mention of daughters of perdition or non-binaries of perdition anywhere here. So.
I totally get the joke. It's probably more metaphorical in the same way mankind is metaphorical, but still, I totally get the joke.
As long as they're only calling prophets and apostles that are men, I'm going to go with my joke because to everything there is an opposite, you know.
Sure. Totally. I'm totally good with that joke.
Bradley, do you want to add anything more about what you've learned from learning that there are 3 degrees of glory and sons of perdition and all of that wonderfulness after we?
Yeah. For me, the more that I've learned about the plan of salvation and how all of this works, it feels a lot more like we kind of decide where we want to go than God telling us where to go. If we have a desire to go to a certain kingdom, I feel like we have that potential and we're not going to be turned away from that opportunity to be able to qualify for that.
I like that.
Yeah, and if we don't want to strive for that, then we don't have to. There's other options. It's not going to be, I don't feel like anybody's going to be disappointed or discouraged by wherever they end up. They're going to be where they want to be.
I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are going to be where they feel happiest. And that's what I think exactly what we're talking about. We've talked about this previous things, like, will I be in a state of happiness? Yes, you will. You will be in a state that you feel absolutely happy, wherever that is. That's why Christ said, the way Christ described it, he described it simpler. He just said there are many mansions in heaven. And there's good chance that there's degrees inside of all the other, these main degrees, right? I don't know
Right.
that, but
well, when I have, and it's funny because I'm not often impressed to share a personal revelation in this context, but the Holy Spirit is very loud right now, so I will bend. The revelation that I have personally received about my own questions, when I have asked in regarding this section and other personal challenges about leaving this planet, it's like, what does happen? And the impressions that I constantly have received have been very, very consistent with Doctrine and Covenants 76:111, which is, for they shall be judged according to their works, and every man shall receive according to his own works his own dominion in the mansions which are prepared. And to me, my interpretation is, if that is, you will be given what is heaven to you. So that's my interpretation of a revelation given to me. So but for me, it lined up. and when my personal revelations line up with the scriptures, that's when I feel the best. It's like, oh, okay, I think I got this. Does that make sense, Andrew?
oh, absolutely. I think it's an amazingly happy doctrine and inclusive doctrine when you truly look at it. Now, we sometimes as mortals have a hard time truly understand. Like for instance, I had to put up a diagram that showed you pre-mortal existence, down to mortal life, up to spirit world, over to resurrection, because we think linearly. We think in these lines that have to go like that. And it's probably not like that. It's very much more like very dynamic and very maybe even circular. I don't even know exactly what it, like if you look at how the galaxies and universe have exploded, and solar systems kind of congregate to themselves, and planets congregate to themselves, and yet they're all part of the one big thing, yet they're different groupings of
multi-dimensional spectrum,
and they're multi-dimensional. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's much more like what the next world's going to be like. And the problem is you can't perceive it because we only perceive 3 dimensions, right?
That's true. That's very true. And I think, we could go into this particular section for hours, because this
we
is a
could
long
do the whole
section.
year of podcasting on just
really
this section.
But I just wanted to, as I've mentioned in this program before, we are not going to teach you the gospel. We are sharing with you the impressions that we've had from this sections. We invite you to read this and study and ponder on this section for as many hours as you desire.
And if you disagree with it, put it in the comments and let us know. Let us learn more from you.
Please teach us, because I believe that we all teach one another. Okay, anything more about the section before we wrap up with some love and light for this week ahead? Okay, Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot for love and light.
Oh, I get the love and light for that. I think my love and light is that God is not a God of punishment. I think one of the key lines that we learn from this section is that even though there are consequences to our sin, they are not endless. It talks about eternal punishment, meaning it's God's punishment. It's just as much part of the way you're learning and growth as everything else. It's not punishment for punishment's sake, right? It is a consequence of sin, or it's consequences of choice, but that's what it is. And truthfully, the plan of salvation is a plan of inclusivity and love, and that's my love.
Thank you, Andrew. Bradley.
Yeah, so my love and light comes from just like personal experience as of late, where I felt like God wasn't answering my prayers or wasn't listening to me, or things weren't making sense. And I've just learned and gained a stronger testimony that eventually things do make sense. And so we just have to be patient. That times in our lives when we feel like God wasn't listening was really God just giving us the opportunity to grow and to learn things for ourselves. So it was a good reminder to me.
Thank you, Bradley. Well, for my love and light, I'm going to give you a quote from Elder Ulysses Suarez talk from this last general conference. Jesus Christ, the caregiver of our soul. He suffered these things for all, taking upon himself the sins of the world, thus becoming our ultimate spiritual caregiver. As we draw nearer to him, surrendering ourselves spiritually to his care, we will be able to take upon ourselves his yoke, which is easy, and his burden, which is light, thus finding that promised comfort and rest. Furthermore, we will receive the strength we all need to overcome the hardships, weaknesses, and sorrows of life, which are exceedingly difficult to endure without his help and healing power. So we hope that your week ahead is full of the love and light of Jesus Christ. We love you, and so does God.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.